Sir, you're not getting on that plane. Not today.
I'm the captain of that flight. My crew is waiting on me.
Don't lie to me. Show me real ID now.
You're escalating a situation you created, and you're doing it on camera.
ID, let's
This
go.
is my airline credential, my FAA certificate, and my passport. You want to look at all three?
I said real ID.
And I said I'm the captain of that flight.
The terminal was already alive in that pre-dawn way airports get. Half the lights bright, half the people dim, and every sound sharper because nobody's fully awake yet. Rolling suitcase wheels hissed over tile. A PA voice announced a gate change for some flight to somewhere warm. The smell of coffee and jet fuel mixed in the air like a promise and a warning at the same time. At the far end of Concourse C, boarding had just started for Flight 372, and the line moved in little bursts as the scanner chirped and the agent waved people through. Marcus Reed walked with the kind of pace that never looks rushed, even when time matters. He was 49, tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing the uniform like it belonged to him. Because it did. Navy jacket, crisp shirt, tie straight, wings pinned cleanly over his chest. He carried a small black flight bag in one hand and his roller in the other, and the strap of his crew ID lanyard rested against his shirt in plain view. His face held the calm of someone who'd spent most of his adult life making decisions at 35,000 feet, where panic costs lives and composure is part of the job description. He wasn't thinking about drama. He was thinking about the day's weather along the route, the short turnaround on the other end, the maintenance note his first officer had texted him last night, and the fact that he hadn't seen his daughter in 3 days. This flight was supposed to be routine. On time, clean departure, smooth climb, and an early afternoon home. Simple, professional, another day in the air. He glanced at the gate clock as he approached. Boarding time. The aircraft was already taking passengers. His crew would be at the jet bridge, waiting for him to step in and take the left seat. He'd done this thousands of times. Show ID if asked, greet the gate agent, step past the line, down the bridge, and into the familiar quiet of the cockpit. Marcus moved toward the crew side of the stanchions, as he always did, and held up his badge with a polite nod. The gate agent, a tired woman with a headset and a practiced smile, started to nod him through, then paused, eyes flicking over his face, then his uniform, then his badge. A voice cut across the noise, sharp and too loud for the hour. "Hey, hold it, you!" Marcus stopped. He turned slightly, not startled, just attentive. The voice came from a uniformed airport police officer standing near the boarding lane, one of the officers assigned to security presence, the kind who mostly watched for disorderly passengers and left everyone else alone. This officer wasn't watching disorderly passengers. He was staring directly at Marcus as if he'd been waiting for him to appear. The officer stepped closer, boots loud on the tile. His name tag read Hayes, mid-30s, close-cropped hair, posture that leaned forward like he needed someone to give him a reason. He looked Marcus up and down in a way that didn't feel like routine security at all. It felt personal, even though they'd never met. Marcus kept his voice even. "Morning, officer. I'm crew. I'm headed down to the aircraft." Officer Hayes didn't return the greeting. He pointed at Marcus's lanyard like it offended him. "That's not enough. Show me your ID." Marcus lifted the badge slightly. "This is my airline-issued crew ID. The gate agent can verify. I'm the captain on this flight." Hayes' mouth tightened. "No, you're not." The gate agent froze, caught between two roles, the one that moves passengers forward and the one that avoids conflict with uniformed authority. A few passengers in line leaned to see what was happening. Someone's phone came up, not obvious but not hidden either. People record everything now. Marcus didn't react to the insult. He'd learned years ago that when someone wants you emotional, your calm is the first act of self-defense. "Officer, I'm not here to argue. I'm scheduled to operate this flight. If you have a concern, I'm happy to address it, but I need to get to the cockpit." Hayes stepped closer, invading the space that polite society pretends matters. "I said, show me your real ID, driver's license, passport, something that proves you are who you claim." Marcus blinked slowly. "I can show my driver's license if required, but can you tell me why you're detaining me at the gate? I haven't done anything. I'm in uniform. My credentials are displayed. What's the issue?" Hayes' eyes narrowed. "My issue is people try to sneak past security all the time. I'm not letting you just walk through because you're wearing a costume." That word, costume, landed like a slap because it wasn't just rude. It carried a message. You don't belong in that role. Not in my world. Not in this uniform. Marcus felt a familiar heat in his chest. The kind he'd felt before in different rooms with different faces and the same quiet assumption. He didn't let it reach his voice. "I'm going to ask you again," Marcus said, steady. "Am I being detained? And if so, for what reason?" Hayes' hand went toward his radio. "You're being detained because I said so. Now ID." The gate agent cleared her throat, trying to help. "Officer, that is a crew member. We have his information in the system. He's on the crew list." Hayes didn't look at her. Stay out of it. I'm handling this. Marcus turned his head slightly toward the agent, not to undermine the officer, but to keep the interaction grounded in reality. Ma'am, can you please call the station manager and advise that the captain is being delayed at the gate? Also, notify the cockpit that I'm here but being held, Hayes snapped. Don't tell her what to do. Marcus met his eyes. I'm not telling her what to do. I'm requesting assistance. There's a difference. Hayes took a half step forward, voice rising. Hand me your license, now. Marcus slowly set his roller bag upright beside him and kept one hand resting on the handle, the other still holding his flight bag. He wasn't making sudden movements. He wasn't posturing. He was doing what he'd trained himself to do in every tense situation: reduce variables. Officer, I will comply with a lawful request, but you need to identify the legal basis. Are you conducting an investigation? Do you suspect me of a crime? Or is this simply because you don't believe I'm a pilot? Hayes's face tightened further, as if Marcus's composure made him angrier. You want to get smart? Fine. I suspect you of impersonation. That's a crime. The word impersonation drew murmurs from the line. A woman with a toddler shifted her child on her hip, eyes wide. A businessman in a blazer frowned like he didn't want to be involved but couldn't stop watching. The gate agent's eyes darted toward the jet bridge like she wished she could disappear down it. Marcus's voice stayed calm, but it sharpened. Impersonation requires evidence. What evidence do you have? Hayes lifted his chin. My evidence is, you don't look like a captain. There it was. Not explicit enough to be a confession to himself, but clear enough to everyone who knew how prejudice speaks when it thinks it can get away with it. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. He'd had passengers refuse to listen to him when he made announcements until his first officer, white, younger, less experienced, spoke, and suddenly the same words carried weight. He'd had hotel clerks ask for extra verification. He'd had security randomly select him a little too often. He knew the script. He just didn't expect it at a boarding gate, in uniform, with a plane full of passengers waiting for him. Marcus took a breath and let his training do the work. Officer, I'm going to inform you that this interaction is being recorded by your body camera and by members of the public. I'm also going to ask you to call your supervisor to the scene. Immediately. Hayes smirked. You don't get to order me around. I'm not ordering, Marcus said. I'm requesting, and I'm preserving evidence. That's what responsible adults do when an authority figure is escalating without cause. Hayes's radio crackled as he keyed it. Dispatch, I need a supervisor at gate C12. Possible impersonation. Male subject refusing to identify. Marcus didn't flinch at refusing. He looked past Hayes to the gate agent. Please, ma'am, confirm with ops that Captain Reed is at the gate and is being delayed by airport police. The gate agent nodded quickly, hands shaking slightly as she reached for her phone. Hayes pointed. You, don't move. Marcus folded his hands lightly in front of him, open palms visible, posture neutral. I'm not going anywhere. I want this resolved correctly. Minutes stretched in an airport way, fast for the rest of the terminal, slow for the people trapped in one moment. Boarding slowed. The line backed up. The scanner chirped once, then stopped as the gate agent, now visibly stressed, held her hand up to pause boarding. Someone in line complained. Another passenger raised their phone higher, recording openly now. From the jet bridge, a flight attendant appeared, her face professional but concerned. She scanned the scene and locked onto Marcus like he was a lighthouse. She stepped up carefully. Captain, we were wondering where you were. We're at final boarding. Marcus gave her a small nod. I'm here. There's an issue. Hayes turned, eyes flicking over the attendant, then back to Marcus, like even that confirmation didn't satisfy him. Ma'am, step back. This is police business. The attendant stiffened. Officer, that is Captain Reed. We're waiting on him. Hayes raised his voice. I said step back. The attendant stepped back, but her expression changed. She wasn't afraid. She was angry. Quietly. Professionally angry, the kind that shows up after you've seen too many people treated unfairly in the name of procedure. She pulled out her phone and spoke softly into it, likely calling someone higher up in the airline chain. Marcus kept his tone even. Officer Hayes, I want you to understand something. Delaying the flight has safety and operational consequences. Crew duty times are regulated. If I miss a duty window because you're conducting an unlawful detention, this flight may be canceled. Not delayed, canceled. People miss connections. The airline incurs cost. All because you decided my face doesn't match your assumptions. Hayes's jaw worked. You don't get to lecture me. I'm not lecturing, Marcus replied. I'm explaining. There's a difference. A supervisor finally arrived, Sergeant Dana Lowell, older, composed, the kind of officer whose calm felt like a different uniform entirely. She approached with measured steps, taking in the crowd, the gate, the stopped boarding, the phone's recording. She looked at Hayes first. "What's going on?" Hayes spoke quickly, eager, building his narrative while it was still his to control. "Sarge, he tried to bypass screening claiming he's a captain, refused to show ID, possible impersonation." Lowell turned to Marcus. Her eyes went to his uniform, his wings, his badge, the flight bag. She didn't assume innocence. She didn't assume guilt. She assessed. "Sir, I'm Sergeant Lowell. Can you tell me your name and what happened from your perspective?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, Sergeant. I'm Marcus Reed. I'm the captain assigned to Flight 372. I approached the crew access point at this gate, displayed my airline credential, and Officer Hayes stopped me. He demanded my real ID without articulating a reason, then stated he suspects impersonation because, quote, I don't look like a captain. I have repeatedly asked if I'm being detained and what the basis is. I have requested a supervisor. That's you. I'm willing to cooperate with lawful procedures, and I'm also asking that this be handled promptly because passengers are waiting and my crew is on the aircraft." Sergeant Lowell held her face neutral, but her eyes flickered, an officer's version of, "I heard that." She turned to Hayes. "He said you told him he doesn't look like a captain." Hayes scoffed. "I mean, people fake uniforms. It happens. I was doing my job." Lowell didn't argue. She just made a decision. "Okay, Captain Reed, do you have a government ID on you?" "I do," Marcus said. "But I'd like to be clear. Am I legally required to present it to board a flight I'm operating when my airline ID is displayed and the gate agent can confirm my assignment?" Lowell paused because he'd asked a precise question. "In general, we can ask for ID during an investigation. The question is whether there's a legitimate basis to investigate. So let's solve this quickly. If you're willing, show me your driver's license. I'll compare it with your crew credential. We'll confirm with the airline, and you'll proceed." Marcus nodded once. "Under protest, to avoid further delay to passengers, I will." He moved slowly, narrated his motion, another tactic he'd learned. "I'm reaching into my jacket. I'm removing my wallet." He handed the license to Sergeant Lowell. Lowell looked at it, then looked at his crew ID. Name matched, photo matched. The calm, boring reality of it matched. She handed it back. "Thank you. Gate agent, can you confirm he's on the crew list?" The gate agent, almost relieved to be asked, tapped quickly at her screen. "Yes, Marcus Reed, captain. Crew list shows him as operating." Lowell turned to Hayes. "So what's the issue?" Hayes hesitated, caught between doubling down and retreating. He chose the most dangerous middle. "We still need to make sure. Anyone could get a fake badge." Lowell's voice cooled. "He has a valid government ID matching his airline credential, and the airline has confirmed. There is no further issue." Hayes' eyes flashed. "Sarge, with respect," Lowell cut him off, firm and controlled. "Officer Hayes, step aside." The crowd felt it, the shift when authority changes hands. Phones kept recording, but the energy changed. This wasn't chaos anymore. It was accountability, walking in, wearing a sergeant's stripes. Lowell faced Marcus. "Captain Reed, I apologize for the delay. You are free to proceed." Marcus didn't move immediately. He met her eyes, voice still calm, but heavier now. "Sergeant, I need this documented, not for revenge, for safety and fairness. I've been publicly accused of impersonation at my workplace. I have a cabin full of passengers watching. I have a crew watching. And I have a body camera capturing what was said. I want an incident number and the name of the officer who initiated the stop." Lowell nodded. "Professional." "You'll get it," Hayes snapped. "He's trying to get me in trouble." Marcus didn't even look at Hayes. "Officer, you got yourself in trouble when you decided your assumptions were evidence." Lowell raised a hand, controlling the scene. "Captain Reed, I'll provide the incident card at the end of the gate area so you can board. Hayes, you're coming with me." Hayes' posture stiffened like someone being told no for the first time in a long time. "Sarge, come on. I didn't do anything." Lowell's voice stayed level. "You delayed a flight and accused a credentialed crew member without articulable facts. And you used language that suggests bias. We're done here." Marcus finally stepped forward. He nodded to the flight attendant. "Let's get this flight moving." As he walked down the jet bridge, the sound of the terminal dulled behind him, replaced by the enclosed hum of the bridge and the faint vibration of the aircraft's systems. The flight attendant walked beside him, matching his pace. "Captain, are you okay?" Marcus exhaled once, controlled. "I'm fine. I'm focused, but we're documenting everything." In the cockpit, the first officer stood as Marcus entered, eyes scanning his face. "Captain, what happened? Gate called and said you were held up." Marcus set his bag down carefully, the way he did everything when he needed his hands to stop shaking without anyone noticing. "We had an interaction with airport police at the gate. I'll brief you after we push. For now, let's check duty time and see if we're still legal." They worked through procedures, battery switches, system checks, route review, because in aviation, discipline is how you keep your world from spinning off its axis when something tries to throw you. But the delay had already done damage. Boarding finished late. The departure slot was missed. The gate agent called down with tight apologies. The captain's delay created a cascade. Ground crew rescheduled, pushback window slipped, taxi time increased, and the plane sat in a long line of red tail lights waiting for clearance. When Marcus finally made the passenger announcement, his voice came through the speakers, steady and professional, like it always did. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We appreciate your patience. We're looking at a departure delay due to a gateside operational issue. Safety is our priority, and we'll be on our way as soon as air traffic control clears us to depart." He didn't mention being stopped. He didn't mention impersonation. He didn't mention the look in Hayes' eyes when he said, "You don't look like a captain," because a cockpit isn't a confession booth. It's a workplace. It's a responsibility. The flight eventually departed, but the delay lingered in everyone's day. Passengers missed tight connections. A crew scheduler somewhere spent an hour rearranging assignments. The airline's operations center filed a report, and Marcus, while flying a perfectly safe flight, carried a quiet weight in his chest. Not just the insult, but the reality that it could happen again tomorrow, and that if he didn't respond correctly, the story would get rewritten into something uglier. After landing, Marcus didn't go to the hotel bar like some crews did. He didn't vent in the shuttle. He didn't post online. He went to his room, sat at the small desk beneath the generic hotel art, and opened his laptop like a man preparing a pre-flight plan. He wrote what happened in precise, unemotional language. Times, locations, names, quotes as close to exact as memory allowed. He requested preservation of all body camera footage, terminal surveillance, and gate audio if available. He requested the incident number. He requested internal review. He didn't accuse. He documented. Then he did something most people don't even know exists. He filed a parallel complaint through the airport authority's professional standards portal and the airline's corporate security liaison, ensuring the issue couldn't be buried in a single department's inbox. He attached his duty schedule and operational impact because he understood that institutions move faster when they can measure the cost. He also asked for one specific thing, a formal determination on whether Officer Hayes' stop was consistent with policy and whether the officer's language violated the standards expected of public-facing airport law enforcement. By the next morning, the complaint had already found oxygen. Not because Marcus was famous, but because he was thorough. It landed on the desk of a manager who recognized risk the way pilots recognize weather, not by emotion, but by patterns. A delayed flight due to an officer's discretionary stop is the kind of incident that makes liability departments sit up straight. 2 days later, Marcus received a call from the airline's chief pilot's office. The voice on the other end was careful, supportive but cautious, like someone walking a tightrope between empathy and corporate reality. "Captain Reed, we've reviewed your statement. The airport authority has been notified. We're requesting the body cam footage and surveillance. We take this seriously." Marcus's response was calm. "I appreciate that. I want this addressed, not ignored. I did nothing wrong, and I will not accept being treated like a suspect at my own gate because an officer thinks a black man can't be in command of an aircraft." There was a pause on the line, the kind that happens when someone hears the truth stated cleanly and realizes they can't soften it without insulting it. "Understood," the voice said. "We'll be in touch." Behind the scenes, the airport authority opened an internal review. Sergeant Lowell was interviewed first because she'd resolved the scene and because her body cam would have captured Hayes' statements, including the most damning one. The gate agent provided her account. The flight attendant provided hers. Passenger videos began surfacing as well because when public trust breaks in a crowded place, everyone becomes a witness. When the footage was pulled, it was worse than Marcus's written report, not because Marcus exaggerated, but because cameras capture tone. They capture the smirk, the dismissive wave, the way a person's voice changes when they believe someone doesn't deserve respect. In the video, Hayes didn't just question Marcus. He performed suspicion like a show. He used words like costume. He escalated without cause. He ignored confirmation from airline staff. And the line that sealed his fate was plain as day. "You don't look like a captain." That phrase hit the reviewers with a clarity that policies can't hide behind. Because it wasn't about security, it wasn't about verification, it was about bias wearing a badge. The airport authority's investigators categorized the issues in a way institutions often do. conduct, procedure, and professionalism. They noted that Hayes failed to articulate a clear reason for detention before escalating. They noted he disregarded workplace verification available on scene. They noted he interfered with airline operations without adequate basis. And they noted that his language created the appearance, if not the reality, of discriminatory profiling. What made it worse was what came next. When Hayes was interviewed, he didn't own it. He didn't say, "I messed up." He didn't say, "I should have handled that differently." He said, "I was just doing my job, and he was being difficult, and people fake uniforms, and I had to be sure." The problem with those excuses is that they fall apart under the simplest question. If Marcus had been a white man in the same uniform with the same badge, would Hayes have said, "Costume"? Would he have said, "You don't look like a captain"? Would he have blocked boarding and accused impersonation? The investigators didn't need mind reading. They had patterns. They pulled Hayes's prior contacts, calls for service, complaints, commendations. And that's when the story widened. There were earlier complaints, smaller ones, easy to ignore in isolation. Travelers describing unprofessional tone. Airline employees describing aggressive posture. A gate agent from another concourse who wrote that Hayes targets certain passengers for unnecessary checks. Nothing that had exploded, nothing that had gone viral, but enough to paint a picture of someone who'd been skating on thin ice until he finally stepped onto a camera in the wrong place at the wrong time. Within a week, Hayes was placed on administrative leave pending review. The authority didn't announce it publicly at first. They rarely do. They prefer quiet corrections, not loud accountability. But quiet doesn't work when the footage exists, and the flight delay can be traced, logged, and verified. The clip leaked anyway because it always does. A passenger posted the moment Hayes said, "Costume," and another posted the line about not looking like a captain. Comment sections lit up with arguments, disbelief, and stories from people who'd lived some version of it themselves. Pilots, black, white, male, female, reacted with a mix of fury and exhaustion because crews know how fragile public trust is and how dangerous it becomes when authority figures treat legitimacy as a matter of appearance. Marcus didn't do interviews. Not at first. He watched the internet do what it does. Simplify, exaggerate, and sometimes get it right by accident. He saw strangers call him heroic. He saw others call him too calm, as if dignity is a provocation. He saw people say he should have complied faster, as if compliance prevents mistreatment rather than sometimes rewarding it. He also saw something that made his jaw tighten. People insisting the incident was just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding is when two people mishear each other. This wasn't that. This was a man being treated like an intruder in a role he'd earned because someone with a badge decided his face didn't match the job. When the airport authority finally released a statement, it was written in the careful language institutions love. "We are aware of the incident. We take allegations seriously. We are reviewing all available evidence." But behind that language, decisions were already being made. Hayes's union representative pushed back, demanded due process, argued that the officer felt threatened by Marcus's questioning. The investigators didn't ignore that claim. They measured it against reality. Marcus never raised his voice. He never stepped toward Hayes. He never cursed. He asked questions. He requested a supervisor. He complied when Sergeant Lowell asked for ID. The threat was not physical. It was psychological. The threat of being challenged by someone Hayes had already decided didn't belong. That distinction mattered. In the end, the authority concluded that Hayes's actions were inconsistent with standards and that his language compromised public trust. They recommended termination. Hayes resigned before he could be fired. Another common pattern, because resignation sometimes lets a person claim they left on their own terms, even when the truth is they were pushed out by their own decisions. His career didn't end because Marcus filed a complaint. His career ended because a camera captured him saying the quiet part out loud. The aftermath didn't stop at one resignation. The airport announced new training requirements for gate area officers. Clear guidance on when ID demands are appropriate, how to verify crew credentials without escalating, and how to avoid bias-based assumptions. They added a policy that any interference with airline operations, especially delays caused by discretionary stops, must be immediately reported to a supervisor with written justification. They also created a direct liaison channel between airline station management and airport police command, so crew disputes wouldn't be handled by whichever officer happened to be nearby and in a mood. Some critics said it was all too little, too late. Others said it was overreaction. But the most honest reaction came from a veteran flight attendant Marcus met weeks later on a different route. She recognized him quietly, leaned in near the galley and said, "Thank you. Not just for you, for the rest of us." Marcus didn't smile much at that. He just nodded. "I didn't do it to be thanked. I did it because I'm tired of pretending it doesn't happen." Months passed. The viral attention faded, as it always does when the internet finds a new fire, but the policy changes remained. The supervisors remembered, and Marcus's name became something in the airport's internal culture, an example, a warning, a reminder that professionalism is supposed to go both ways. Marcus continued flying. He didn't quit. He didn't shrink. If anything, he became more precise, more intentional. He started mentoring younger pilots, especially the ones who looked like him, who carried the same quiet worry. What happens when someone in authority decides you're lying about your own life? He taught them tactics without calling them tactics. Keep your voice steady. Ask clear questions. Request a supervisor. Narrate your movements. Don't match anger with anger. Document everything, not because you're weak, but because the system often listens to paper more than it listens to pain. As for Hayes, the last Marcus heard, he wasn't an airport officer anymore. People like him often drift into work, where the uniform changes, but the ego stays the same. But he'd lost something that mattered, the presumption that his authority would go unquestioned. That's a hard loss for someone who built their identity around being obeyed. Now, here's a question for you. If you were Marcus, standing there in uniform, in public, accused of impersonating the job you've earned, would you have handled it the same way, or would anger have taken the wheel? Drop your answer in the comments, because the way people respond to that question says a lot about what they've had to survive. Because the bigger lesson here isn't just about one officer and one pilot. It's about what happens when institutions rely on gut feeling instead of standards. It's about how quickly suspicion becomes humiliation when it's powered by bias. And it's about how knowledge, calm, documented, professional knowledge, can shift a power dynamic that usually feels one-sided. Most people don't know what to say when authority escalates. Most people get flustered, or scared, or defensive, and some authority figures count on that. They count on you not knowing your options. They count on you accepting disrespect to keep the peace. But when the person in front of them has discipline, clarity, and the patience to make them explain themselves, everything changes. The badge doesn't automatically win. The uniform doesn't automatically make someone right. In that moment, the equalizer isn't violence or volume, it's precision. And yes, there are real risks to challenging authority, especially for people who already get treated like suspects by default. Marcus knew that. He weighed it. He didn't gamble with bravado. He chose the safest form of resistance he had, calm compliance with documentation and accountability through process.